Well, if you have responsibility for running a team, whether it's your own business or a part of a much bigger company, one of the key theories or thoughts that people go after is the notion of finding alignment. Alignment can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So today we're going to dig in and talk about alignment.
You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm your host, Doug Thorpe, and we are talking about alignment. If you're in any kind of a leadership role, whether you own the company or you're working for someone in a bigger enterprise, alignment is really a critical factor in determining your success. And alignment means a lot of different things. So I thought it would be a great idea to have someone join me, and we're going to talk about what alignment might really mean, and more importantly, how do you as a leader make it happen. My guest today is Ken Roseboom. He is a neighbor, so to speak, at least in the global geographic sense. He lives in the Houston area, as do I. And Ken has agreed to join us. Welcome, Ken.
Welcome. Thank you for having me here, Doug.
Yeah, Ken and I actually share a wonderful experience. We're part of a very informal but very dedicated consortium of coaches in the Houston area. We meet once a month. We have our own mastermind, and we talk about hot topics and best practices, and we exchange a lot of ideas. And I don't know about you, Ken, but boy, I find those meetings to be a wealth of value.
I schedule around them, not over them.
Yeah. I agree. Well, Ken, let's start out before we lean into the meat of this subject. Let's talk about your background. Tell us about your journey on how you got to where you are and what has inspired you to do the work you're doing.
Thank you, Doug. Really appreciate that. I'm an engineer and, hired on with a big oil company, 40 years ago now, or 40 some odd, and engineering management, in-field construction, heavy construction, major capital projects. And it was all about, bringing teams together to create something, even decide what the concept is, and then go all the way until it was a producing asset. And along the way, I came in contact with a lot of coaches. We had team development coaches, and engineers had to be, quite frankly, had to be taught that if you really want to achieve visions, you have to motivate with emotion. You have to show care and concern. And that opened up, that was a part of my overall personal development. And it was exciting to me. And, the end result was we created heavy construction projects that we worked millions of work hours. They used to be called man hours. Now they're work hours. And millions of hours without anybody getting hurt and being incident and injury free. And that really inspired me to what's possible and how we did that. So I got the opportunity to start a second career, really one that I got to choose. And it was all about helping people create just that environment where extraordinary things happen, and the extraordinary things that you want to have happen. And so now I kind of refer to myself as a recovering engineer. And and human, and I'm just enjoying the coaching of teams and individuals to work better together, be more fulfilled.
That's awesome. And I don't want to divert too far from our focus area here today, but you touch on a really important aspect. In my own coaching practice, I've had a chance to work with some of those same oil and gas engineer types and engineers of other ilk, other industries, other specialties. And not to pick on them, I love my engineer friends, okay? But engineers are often tough nuts to crack in terms of changing their mindset for leading teams of people. Because when you start talking about the softer skills of leadership, where you get into the art, not the science of it, That's usually a bridge too far for somebody that's predisposed to be a really powerful, effective engineer.
And Doug, that really is my target audience. It's people who are technically minded, from software to finance to, accounting, all the technical industries where people, they got to a level because they were technically, outstanding, but now it's a different skill set that's needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's dive right in. Let's talk about this idea of finding and creating alignment. I'm going to just open up a mental whiteboard here. Give us first a very high level flyover of the way you look at the idea of alignment.
Right. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, you said earlier, alignment. That's a big whiteboard. And so what I'm going to offer up is one person's definition of alignment. I do have to read it here. Alignment is the unspoken promise of leadership that will create a truth-telling culture where all the voices are heard, that we engage in a co-creative exploration on topics that matter, and that we row together and amplify each other's contribution capabilities. And then that meshes with my definition of leadership, which is the art and science, you mentioned that, of inspiring, committed, and aligned action to a clear vision and a common clear vision. And that is a lot of the art and science of what leadership is. It's about that alignment part. So when we speak to alignment now, we really speak to a cookbook, if you will, a very practical cookbook on how to create that culture where people align, to move from, never-ending arguments and missed commitments and lost accountability and frustrating meetings to, higher trust, new conversations, that inclusive part, better decisions, better topics to talk about, and, the coordinated actions. And I'm really liking the term. I think engaged teams is not a high enough goal. I like the idea of thriving teams that really deliver.
Yeah. We were talking in the green room before we kicked off the show. I had a guest a few episodes ago who was a former NFL coach. And in that episode, we talked a lot about alignment in the NFL. And apologies to any listeners that aren't big sports fans, but I am, so you're going to have to deal with it. The football metaphor is amazing. And what this gentleman was telling me is, for all of his work preparing to become a coach, and he went up the ranks. He started literally in Pee Wee football in the neighborhood, and then got to high school, and then college, and then finally the NFL. Alignment was the word. And in that context, the alignment idea was, yes, there are designated positions on the field, so that has a pretty definitive job description, if you will. But now you got to find the talent to execute in that position. So that's alignment point number one. Then, as they develop and perfect their skills in that position, you have to make that position work in harmony with the other 10 slots on the field. And that's how you execute your playbook. And everybody has to be doing their job in unison. Every job's a little different. If you're a lineman, you step one way. If you're on the right side of the line, you step another way if you're on the left side of the line, and all that has to work out. So finding that kind of alignment was the ultimate objective in the coaching profession. If I may, let's kind of use that framework a little bit, or maybe not. Tell me if you've got another approach to it to kind of help team leaders figure things out.
You're triggering me into an old metaphor. I'm liking it. And we used to have it in our team norms. And by the way, we use alignment process. It can be used for, culture change, group decision-making, strategy development. I'm going to do a workshop, next week about developing strategy and team norms, team agreements. And one of the team agreements I really like, going back to the football metaphor, is it's the responsibility of the passer to make sure that when the receiver gets the ball, that they know what to do with it. It's just, remember we had the metaphor in backyard football, well, if it hits your hands, then you should have had it and you should have known what to do. And that kind of breaks down in the world of leadership and work, in that it's really, in my world, it's the person who threw the ball that made the request, and it goes to the receiver. And once they get it, you almost, in the leadership world, you walk over and you say, do you know what to do with this? Do you know where we're going to go with this? When are we going to report back? When are we going to talk? What are the desired outcomes? And that creates the alignment, so that it begins to feel like everybody knows what everybody's doing.
Yeah. If I can shift gears just a minute, still same thread of thought here on the alignment idea. I'm going to shift gears to the small business owner. There's a system out there. It's called the Entrepreneur Operating System that has become really popular in small business. It's part of Gino Wickman's Traction book. If you've never heard of it, check out the book Traction. One of the parts of creating alignment, according to Wickman, is the idea that a small business owner needs to create the job description first. They need to look at their business and say, what are the roles I need on my team? So it's kind of like the football coach, if it was true, that going back and recreating the positions on the field. But think about the function of the position first. Forget personalities, forget Uncle Bob and Aunt Sally that have come to work for you as a small business owner. You need to think about the function first and define the value that role is going to add to the greater good of your business. Then you go recruit a person that has the skill, talent, and hopefully mental, emotional commitment to the role to join your team.
Yeah. And I think that's, I'm relating that to the tools I have around alignment and, what that looks like. And let's kind of launch into that and trying to, weave in your notion of getting the right people on the team, and knowing those roles that make an effective team. So I think that's really important. And it's so I'm just going to launch into the process of alignment, and we work with proposals. So if somebody makes a proposal, and typically it's very, very simple. It's the X's and O's on the on the field, on the diagram for the play, and what each of those roles need to do. And it really it can be very, very simple, truly back of a napkin, as to who, what, why, when, where of what are we proposing. And you were kind of addressing the what and who part. Did we get the right people in the room, or do we know who the stakeholders are? And are these the right people? Are these the right skill sets? And that does set you up for success. That is foundational to your point, Doug. I agree. And then there's the why part. That's like, well, why is this important? What's the context? And set up a proposal around that. And then the what are we going to do? What is the play? If we stick with the football metaphor, is this a pass? Is this a run? And what is it? And then just a little bit of the context for it. And we make proposals, and then we work through our process to refine and make that proposal better, and decide our commitment on the proposal. And it really is the process.
One thought that does come to mind, and I'm going to ping back to the slightly larger business environment, perhaps even publicly traded type companies. If you're a leader moving around inside one of those companies, often you inherit a pre-existing team. The quote, and I use it loosely, alignment of personnel has been matched in terms of this team has been allocated a head count of 10 or 20 or whatever the magic number might be. Now you're the new manager. Poof, you're in charge, go. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I would argue, and where I'm going with this is I would argue that it's incumbent on every new leader that moves in like that to spend some time working this alignment idea, checking if they've got alignment for the purpose of the team, the mission that has been created, the vision that the team has maybe formerly been operating under. And is that still valid? Does that need to be refreshed? And if so, what does that do to the uh, order of members and employees on the team?
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, if you're climbing, if you want to demonstrate your ability as a leader or as a a group leader, a manager, what better way than to quickly align people to a shared goal? That's what people are looking for, and not just those people on your team, your direct reports, and those people. It's how did you engage with customers? Did the customers become more aligned? Did Were you aligned with your boss? Were you aligned with your people? And we speak to that. We speak to upwards alignment. We speak to downwards alignment to your team, and even crossways alignment, which is the customers and your other peers. If you're in a big company, the word silo is going to pop up, and is it a functional silo where each understand what we're doing, or do we just not talk because we don't trust each other? And that, that's poison, as you know.
Right. And I know a lot of the bigger companies have employed the term value chain, and you might think of it as whatever the product or service is that's going out the door to the end customer. There is a process to get it from cradle to grave, as some would say. So some companies are calling this the value chain, and a whole team may be standing in the middle of that cycle. And so understanding their alignment with the greater good of what that value chain is supposed to be about is part of the challenge. And if you're the new leader and you sense any sort of misalignment, typically demonstrated by confusion, it's a great job to be able to be the one to bring that clarity and bring that optimization of the effort so that your team's contribution to the overall value chain is the best it can be.
Yeah, and yeah, you said the key word: confusion and chaos. So it's and that is a great mark of leadership and a leadership team is how can they reduce. I don't know if you can eliminate, but how can you reduce confusion and chaos with clarity? Roles and responsibilities, as well as those handoffs and that's in the world of coaching. A lot of times that comes up in the form of requests and promises and agreements.
Yeah.
What was the agreement for the handoff? And that value chain, that's kind of in the big company, we call it value chain, right? And what's the handoff from the project team to the operations team? And what's that handoff look like? What are the conditions of satisfaction between those two groups? And again, when we talk about alignment, we provide that process to provide clarity to that, a clear vision of what the goal line looks like. And that's, that's important. It's a big deal.
I've got a bit of a mantra that I talk to my leaders about, and that is a confused mind says no. And if you yourself are not clear on directives coming down from above, or if you're a small business owner, you're not clear on what the market's telling you about your business, there needs to be some work done on that clarity. And you could argue that's a kind of alignment to get aligned properly with where you fit in that scheme. And as a leader in a bigger business, being able to then communicate to your team what mission, vision, purpose is all about so that they can have the clarity to go about their skill delivery in the best way possible.
Yeah, Doug, I'd augment that a bit. Yeah, you said a confused mind is a no, or in the big corporate world, it's a confused mind is a compliant yes. It's a fake yes. It's not a real yes. It's not a heck yes. But no one has the courage to say heck no. So it becomes a half-hearted yes. And, that is not committed. So what we actually do in the alignment process is we provide an opportunity for people to say, remember the old fist of five? Are you a five? Are you a 0 or a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or whatever it might be? And what would move you to a 4? And it's just we really use that tool, and it's become exceptionally powerful. There's an underlying aspect that your yes means nothing if you couldn't say no. And so if you have that opportunity and you have the full range, then that yes really means something. And that level of commitment, rises much higher. That level of accountability rises much higher. And wonderful conversations happen when someone says, I'm not a 5, I'm a 2. It's a very courageous act to do when you do it. And as much as, when you think about the courage of saying you're a 5, but the courageousness of a 2, we've had wonderful conversations in teams when someone says, I'm not all the way on board. Yeah.
I like that idea, and I'm reflecting on a few years ago. I had an extended engagement with one of the big oils, and as we got into it, and I was dealing with some of their top of the house leaders, they were kind of categorically lamenting their sense of what they called the frozen middle of the company. It was like stuff could come down from headquarters, and it would get permeated through a couple of levels, and then it would like hit this giant frozen lake. It's like you couldn't break through the ice. You couldn't. And as we really did the work, kind of digging into what that was about, I came away with this summation that I challenged all those leaders to consider. If you've done a good job hiring people, and I know that's a big if, but if you have, and everybody has their system for vetting and recruiting and selecting, if you've done that, those people are going to want to do the right thing. They don't show up wanting to do something bad. They want to do the right thing. But back to the confusion point, if you as a leader haven't told them what the right thing is, they're going to do nothing for fear of doing the wrong thing. So you got right, wrong, and nothing in the middle. And so that sense of doing nothing and is what creates that frozen middle that seems like it's just not going anywhere.
I've not heard the term frozen middle, but I like it. And, you kind of tie between the two greatest forces in the world, fear and love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fear creates immobilization, frozenness, disenchantment, certainly not thriving. And, love, I'm using the 4-letter word. And we create that. The term we use these days a lot of times is psychological safety and inclusion. Right. One of the greatest takeaways from the workshop we do is our great acronym of SHUVA. Which means that someone is seen, heard, understood, valued, and appreciated. And we build that into our process, and we let it show up in many, many ways, in both in terms of how you do career development and how you nurture people and how you compliment them, and I found it to be, it's now in my bones, and I just see it. If you read any article on psychological safety, I guarantee you'll see at least a couple of the 5 words: seen, heard, understood, valued, and appreciated. And when people feel that, you mentioned that we hired the very, very best, but even the very, very best may not be aligned if they don't feel seen, heard, and appreciated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So they're going to start looking for the greener pastures. So, and you can look at those exit surveys in retention world, and, in my experience, a third, almost a half is about, I just don't feel like I'm growing and I'm appreciated here.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ken, on that note, I think we're going to allow our commercial break to pop in here. And when we come back on the other side, folks, we're going to dive into the leader's mindset for allowing or creating alignment and some of the roadblocks that you and I as leaders may struggle with to get there. So hang with us. We'll be right back.
Business is all about solving complex problems as fast as you can create them. Become the best problem solver by leading others to greatness too. And the first step is going to DougThorpe.com. Doug Thorpe is known globally for coaching entrepreneurs and business leaders, improving their performance and the work output of everyone surrounding them. You can find health, wealth, and happiness by learning to lead others to health, wealth, and happiness. Go to DougThorpe.com now and order Doug's books or hire him to coach your managers. That's DougThorpe.com.
All right, everyone, we're back. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm your host, Doug Thorpe, and today I'm talking about a friend and colleague, Ken Roseboom. In the first half, we talked about this notion of finding alignment for your team and for your role as a leader in the whatever enterprise you're part of. I think now the next logical question would be, all right, if we kind of have an idea of what alignment ought to be, how do we get there? So, Ken, why don't you just explain the process that you help clients with?
Yeah, I really like leading with alignment because we get results fast. Leadership teams feel they see the light at the end of the tunnel, and they get traction, and they feel a culture developing. And we do that really in 3 or 4 workshops, very quickly, not that much time. The team is engaged. It's business focused, action learning. So yeah, the team is working on their content, developing their proposals, and deciding if they're aligned or not on them. And the proposals come out better than they ever could have imagined before. And we coach people through that. Through that, we give people support. And then, it is a culture change. So we know that culture change just doesn't happen in a workshop. It just doesn't work like that. And some reinforcement needs to happen. And so we work on interpersonal alignment, not just, the team alignment and the global, but interpersonal. And this notion of a network of pipes. And you've been in leadership teams, and you know that these 2 people don't get along that well, but you may not recognize how much that brings down the whole team. The whole team's working, against that. So we provide a tool we call Pipeworks for people to assess, well, what's my ability to align with people, to align with specific team members, my direct reports, my peers, my boss, my customers. And is that pipe leaky, or is that pipe, full and flowing well? Can we work together? And we provide that tool for people to really make that assessment. We notice that when we start measuring that, of course, it starts improving, and it really starts working. And then people still get in their own way. We know that we're all born with our personality. We're all have our own experiences, and we'll bring in a personality assessment also to help people better understand themselves, as well as, the people they work with. And as you know, for me, that's the Enneagram. There's a lot of them out there, but to me, the Enneagram is a rich tool to do that with.
Yeah. Well, I would like to talk a little bit more about that, but before we do, I want to highlight. I'll rephrase and repeat what I think you said there, and it is critical. It's very important. Good coaching. When we create this alignment at the team level, we do have to make various forms of assessment about how's that going to work. Where are we pre-existing? Where do we want to go? What do we want to be about? What areas do we need to work extra hard on to improve? So forth. And you're right, inevitably it leads to the discussion about each individual asking themselves the question, how am I going to show up? Now that I see this definition of the framework we need to be operating in, and that everybody has consented to embrace as our alignment model, how do I show up in all that? And we cannot avoid the idea of personality being the first potential roadblock to making all that happen. So to your point, there are a lot of personality assessments out there. I think every good coach worth his salt has 1 or 2 of them he can deploy, she can deploy. But there is a popular one called the Enneagram. And for those who haven't seen it or heard of it, Ken, why don't you give us the high level of how Enneagram comes together?
Got it. Yeah. So as we grow up, even as we're born, we come out, every mother will say, yeah, he came out that way, and
Right.
And then a set of experiences happen to us as we grow up. We find out how to find love. We find, we maybe traumatic. There's things that happen to us, and we develop a success strategy. In some cases, even a survival strategy for how to get love, how to make our way in the world. And through the lens of the Enneagram, there's 9 basic ways that we were motivated to be successful. And generally those ways have worked for us, and we can become entranced or become that's our way. Some people are dominant. Some people are very helper oriented. Some people, really work to facilitate and have peace. Other people really want to do it right. Other people want to connect the dots. Some people are the deep feelers. Some people are the risk managers, and everybody needs a risk manager on their team. Somebody who is constantly aware of the risk profile out there, and they bring that viewpoint that sometimes is in tension with the people that just want to get going, But when we understand that, as the Enneagram brings to light, really shines a light on that, shines a light. What differentiates it is it shines a light on our inner motivation for things that happen. We all share all these aspects, but one of them a little bit more than the others. And along with that inner motivation comes some behaviors. They come some blind spots, some triggers. How do we get our way? How do we deal with conflict? But we can begin to put a framework around that. And what I really like about the Enneagram is it doesn't just provide that box to put you in, it says, okay, here I am. I'm an introvert, something like that. Right. But it provides clear ways, centuries old ways to move away from that, human nature ways that help us to become more of ourselves and really integrate and, discover that greater part of us.
I'm a big fan in that personality assessment, and I want to say quickly for some who might be listening, and because I've run into it and I appreciate it and I can respect the question. The question is, all this personality stuff sounds like woo-woo to me. I'm just a nuts and bolts guy. I want to get to the job. I want to figure this out, and let's plow forward. And what I think is important to think about, you do need, if you want to really improve your leadership skill set, you need to think about the difference between what you might have as an internal motive or value structure. And you got to ask the question, how does that show up at work? I may be going out there into the world creating and exhibiting certain behaviors. In my mind, they're right, they're true, they're pure, they're light. But I may not be getting that reaction from the people around me, the people I'm trying to influence. I may be very off-putting for something that's in that mix. So as a leader, I need to do the work to try to, A, figure that out and understand what those disconnects might be, and then B, decide on how can I find an alternate behavior that still doesn't violate my belief and thought and value. And that's part of the magic of effective executive coaching, is helping someone make that next step up to create a better behavior pattern that can create effectiveness and influence in the work you're trying to do.
Yeah, so certainly, and I totally agree. And it does begin with that inner knowledge, right?
Right.
This is how I operate, and we do 360s as well. I like the leadership circle for a 360 tool that people that work with you can tell you how they see you, and you can compare that to how you see yourself. And there's also that notion that if somebody is seems to always be in conflict, seems to always, they're struggling with something. And many times they're whining, or maybe even they're blaming, And so we have something that we call, whine to wow, And so if it's always seems to be problems around me, the common denominator is me. And so what can I do about that? And I think everybody has some growth in that space and some awareness improvement. And you mentioned reacting. When I'm reacting, it's a quick, I'm going on instinct, I'm going on what's worked before, but perhaps a response, something that has just a little bit of gap of time, and I can respond in a way to meet people where they're at and respond to them in a way that they're going to hear, and they'll take action. And I'll just go back to, my acronym. How can they be seen, understood, valued, and appreciated as a leader? If I can bring that out in them, then the commonality begins to happen.
Yeah. If any of my clients are listening, they've heard me say before, there is a big difference between react and respond. And I use the picture of when you go to the doctor to get medicine. If you react to it, that's bad. You're getting worse. If you respond to it, you're returning to good health. And I think the react respond has exactly the same significance in how you show up as a manager and a leader. If you're constantly reacting to things, you're probably creating more confusion, more chaos, and certainly have the high side potential of alienating some people. But if you're responding to the moment, you can stay true to your mission, true to your purpose, true to your alignment. Because if you're locked in on what that alignment is, you can respond to whatever question, whatever challenge comes your way, because you've got a very solid, clear lens of how you want to look at things. And with that, you're equipped to be able to respond, not react to everything going on around you.
Yeah. And Doug, I'll just, one snippet. Enneagram is beautiful in the sense that it can be wonderfully simple, and it can also, bring quite a bit of complexity and more work around it. And through the lens of the Enneagram, there's kind of three ways that people respond to conflict when they don't get what they want. Some people, I'm in this category, I'm positive. I'm going to reframe it. I'm going to move on. I'm going to look for where's the silver lining? Where's the common? What do we have in common here? I'm going to look for that. Other people, when they get into conflict, they're going to run to their competencies. They're going to say, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing it efficiently? Or do we understand the impact? Are we doing it the right way? And they're going to run to that, but they may miss the emotional aspect. The third way, the people who are emotional realists. And to your point, I want everybody else to be like me. So the emotional realist doesn't know if they trust you if you're not as upset as they are. So you can just imagine, here's this competency-based person saying, well, this is just a problem. I don't need to get, you don't need to see that much emotion from me. And the emotion-based person is saying, no, I really want to see just a little bit of something, please,
Right.
And the positive-based person is there saying, are we sure we really have a problem, and the other people are saying, yeah, we really have a problem. Don't you get it? So when all those three people can borrow a little bit and understand from each other, the solution comes much quicker, and the resolution becomes more holistic, a little bit better. So the Enneagram provides that lens into understanding yourself as well as understanding others.
Part of me, wasn't the thought that's going through my mind. My content editor is switches are going off, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the things that I always find challenging when I go into companies who have invested in some of the classic personality assessments, and I'm not even going to name a name because there's multiple out there, but I'm going to say red, yellow, blue, and green. How about that? 100% of the time in my whole career, the problem I find with companies where they've done the broad brush stroke of presenting that, we see people with one more label and the world does not need more labels, but we see everybody gets a new label, and they may even have stickers on their door frame or on their name badge or something that, the red, yellow, blue, green thinking. And it becomes a divisive tool, not a collaborative tool. And I can also say 100% of the time I've had the coaches and the consultants that are presenting this, they will tell you in the workshops, the intent is to allow you to appreciate who those other people are. They'll say that, but nobody does it that way.
Yeah.
And so my point in going on that little mini rant is that when we do the personality work, I think it is important for leaders first to count that as part of their journey of leadership development. Creating and improving your level of self-awareness on where you sit today is one of the first steps in finding a path to upping your game. But if you really want to take it one step further, allowing a tool like this to be administered to your team and having an earnest, honest, sometimes one-on-one discussion about encouraging them to take the same journey is really important for creating the right mindset so that you can get back to the idea of leading alignment and leading achievement of the big vision.
Yeah, Doug, 6 tangents ran through my head just then. Yeah.
This always happens.
Yeah, and I think the one or two I'm going to run with is, yeah, I am certified both individual and team Enneagrams. We do a team report, so the team can see it there that everybody's primary style shows up, as well as several other elements of it, and how that shows up in their team dynamic. And then it's a real personal thing that the trust is engaged more. People see each other. And you're right, Doug. It's a box. This is how you get out of it. And this is someone's style. It's not who they are. And the other thought that came to my mind is that they're just models. Think of it as an operating system. My computer here's got an operating system, but I don't touch that. I don't work with that day in and day out.
Right.
It's just kind of
Right.
there. And if I do the work, I can move from Ken 3.0 to Ken 4.0. And it kind of happens in the background and offline, if you will.
Yeah. I love it. And Ken, I think that's a great place to put a bow on this and call it a day. But thank you, man, for joining in. So tell everybody real quick the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more about both the idea of alignment and maybe embarking on an Enneagram journey.
Great. Yeah. Ken at thinkingpartners.com. I own the firm Thinking Partners. So yeah, Ken at thinkingpartners.com. The website is getting a rev up. So you can go see the one we have now. I really love to see you take a look at the one in a couple of months. I'm really excited about that. And yeah, drop me a note if you want to be included in my email list. I really put some effort into not a lot of emails, but emails that count.
Yeah.
And so that's my, I think that's the best way to engage. I'm also on LinkedIn and fairly active there.
Wonderful. Well, Ken, again, thank you for being a guest and really appreciate your insights and commentary here.
All right. Thank you, Doug. It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful banter. And yeah, it's a shame. I don't know if I've never listened to a 4-hour podcast, but we could do one.
I think so. I think we could. Well, on that note, folks, we're going to wrap up and thank you for dropping in and spending some time with us. I want you to know, if you're listening on your favorite streaming service, that we are available on video over at YouTube. Same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Either type that in or just my name, you'll find the channel. Please hop over, subscribe, leave us a comment, give us a recommendation on thoughts on the show and anything else. I do want to put a plug into my friends and colleagues over at IBGR Network. That's IBGR.network on the web. That is a global syndication of podcasters, and I've got the privilege of being in their network. And the show appears on Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern on IBGR.network. If you can't get us anywhere else, try hopping over there and checking that out. There's a lot of other great shows that are featured there. It's a biz-only talk show network. I'll get that out. And would love to see you over there as well. So for now, we're going to sign off, say goodbye, and thank you very much. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Doug.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.